Hello Internet! Many of you guys have asked me to do a PHP tutorial like I did with JavaScript and Java, and so here it is. In this tutorial I will teach pretty much the entire PHP language in one video. So I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Okay, so this is going to be the basic format for this video tutorial. Over here on the left I have a basic text editor. Over here on the right I have Google Chrome, and it is going to run everything for us. Now what I did ahead of time was I went and created a basic HTML file called enterinfo.html, and right here you can see I have the PHP script that we're going to be making, and it's going to process, meaning the PHP script is going to process every bit of information that is in this basic HTML file. So when the user comes over here and enters some information like that and clicks on submit, it's going to jump over to learn php.php and it's going to execute everything. And all I have here basically is just a form, and I'm going to be using the post message, which is going to send the data input into this form via a separate message, versus using the get method, which is going to send the data entered by appending it to the end of the URL. I am proposing that everybody watching this video knows HTML, but if not, I have a link in the description underneath the video to my HTML tutorial. You learned HTML in about 15 minutes with that one. Then I have a basic table here, and name and address, and the ability to input this information, and then at the very bottom here I have a submit button. So very, very simple. So let's start writing the PHP code. Okay, so as you can see here, it is still HTML even though we're creating PHP files here. And you basically just embed PHP code between tags. And those tags would be PHP, just like this. And then it would end at the bottom with a question mark and a closing tag. And it's just as simple as that. Now one thing to remember is the PHP code that you write here in this file isn't going to show if the user tries to view source. And very, very important, you're going to have to put a semicolon to finish every PHP statement. Now, of course, if you have multi-line comments, you're not going to have to put a semicolon after those. And also you have single-line comments. And also there's another single-line comment, which is just the number sign. So just another. Okay, so those are the different types of comments you can use inside of PHP. Now, if you use the PHP statement echo, it is basically just going to output onto your screen whatever you put between the quotes. So you could say something like data processed, and then put a closing tag here, and then a semicolon at the end, and that's going to output that on the screen. Let's just come over here, hit submit, and you can see data process shows up right there. Now one thing to note here is I'm using double quotes here, and basically what double quotes are going to allow you to do is use escape sequences. So for example, if I wanted to put double quotes inside of here around data processed, I'd have to come in here and put a backslash and a double quote, and another backslash and a double quote, and you can see that those showed up here on the right side of the screen. If, however, I was going to use single quotes, I would not be able to do this because single quotes ignore escape sequences, and you're also not going to be able to print out variables directly inside of this statement with the echo. I'm going to show you that here in a moment. Let's do something right here out of the gate that's a little bit interesting just to show you how cool PHP can be. Let's go and print out all types of date information onto the screen. I'm going to go date default time zone set. And I'm going to use here the coordinated universal time, which is a standard to use. And then what I'll be able to do is come in here and use all of these different symbols to define exactly what type of date I want to print out on our screen. So let's just come in here and let's just create this. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to use echo again, and then I'm going to call date. And let's say that I want to put the hour. Well, you can see right here, hour, 12-hour format. So I'm going to put that there. I'm going to put a colon inside of it. Then I'm going to want minutes, which is I, as you can see above. Seconds, and then U would be milliseconds. I could then type in A for lowercase AM and PM. I could put a comma inside of there, then put an L for the full text for our day, capital F for full text for the month, day of the month, and then if I wanted to put a suffix on it like first, second, third, I just put a capital S there, put the year in with a capital Y, and then an E will print out the actual time zone that I'm going to use, which is going to be UTC. Close that off with another single quote, and there you can see date processed, and then it's going to have the exact time in milliseconds, PM, Saturday, August 19th, 2014, UTC. So I just wanted to show you real quickly how to do that, and of course all the code that we have here is available in the description underneath the video. Now whenever we look back at our HTML here, you can see that I have the names defined for username, street address, and city address. Well, they enter that information. How exactly am I going to be able to go in and grab it and use it inside my PHP code? Well, it's rather easy. I'm going to put a $sign in here, which is how you start all of your variable names, which is where you're going to store your information. I'm just going to call this user's name. And then because the HTML used the post way of passing information, I'm going to type in $_post, put a bracket, and then I'm going to type in the username, which is the name that was defined in the HTML code, and then go right like that. And that's going to be able to get me all of that data that was passed in there quite easily. And then I could get the street address and the city address in exactly the same way. Now, it's very important to understand how to define your variable names. Basically, they're all going to start off with $signs, and then the very first letter here is going to have to be a letter, and then thereafterwards you're going to be able to use letters, numbers, or underscores to define them. Another thing that's important is user's name is going to be different than user's name with a lowercase n, because variable names are case sensitive. And another thing that might be really weird is whenever you create a variable, it is automatically going to be given a data type whenever it receives a value. And all the possible data types are either going to be integers, which are going to be whole numbers without decimal numbers afterwards, floats, which are going to be decimal numbers, strings, which are going to be just a series of characters, booleans, which have the value of true or false, arrays, or objects. And arrays are just boxes inside of boxes, a whole bunch of different items inside of those. And we'll get more into that later on in the tutorial. And if you're wondering, by default, a variable will get the value of null. So that pretty much covers everything about variables. And let's go and echo some more information out on a screen, like our user's name that the users type in there. So you just go user's name, just like that, and there it shows up. Now you can use something called string concatenation. So let's say I wanted to put a break after every single one of these strings that I print on the screen, which would be very useful and very helpful and be able to see everything. I could then just put a period inside of here followed by whatever I want to show on our screen. Then let's say I want to do street address and city address. Make sure you have a lowercase a right there, and then save this, jump over here, and there you can see it printed everything out on the screen and also put the line breaks inside of there. Another thing you can do with text is use what's called a here doc syntax, which is basically, let's just come in here and create a basic string. What you could do is have your string go over multiple lines, and all you're going to have to do is put these little sideways carets inside of here. Then you're going to have to define pretty much anything that won't show up in your string. Then what this is going to allow you to do is go the customer's name is, and just keep going. And then you just type in user's name, and they live at, and then we type in street address, in city address, and then you could throw your break statements in there if you'd like. And at the very end, you have to make sure you do this. Make sure there's no white space before this, and then you're going to type in EOD, exactly what you have above. And then you could just come in here simply and go echo and string. And there you can see customer's name is Derek, and they live at 123 Main Street in Derry. Come and get rid of some of this stuff. Another thing you can do, of course, is define constants, and they are pretty much exactly what you think. They are values that cannot be changed. So if I want to put pi inside of here, there we go. And then I would simply be able to come in here anytime I want and go echo the value of pi is, and then uppercase. And you would want to use uppercase with all your constants. And there you can see that it printed out just like that. Of course, like every other programming language, you're going to be able to do all types of different forms of arithmetic. And I'm going to show you other different ways to print stuff out here on our screen here in a moment. So let's say that I wanted to print out on the screen whatever 5 plus 2 is equal to. Put that period inside of there. I'm going to go 5 plus 2. And let's do this for a whole bunch of them. So let's do a subtraction, and let's do a multiplication, which is a star, and let's do a division, and modulus, which is going to return the remainder of a division. And of course, change these guys over here as well, and then throw in another break statement. Another thing you can do also is, let's say you wanted to cast to an integer. So let's come in here, and if we do this division here, it's going to come back 2.5, of course, because 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. Let's say, however, I wanted it to show up as an integer or cut off the decimal place. I would just put integer inside of these brackets like that. And of course, you're going to be able to do that with all the different data types. So if you wanted it to show up as a change from an integer to a float or a double, for example, which is just a number with a decimal place, you would just type in double inside of here instead. But we're going to leave this integer. You could also do the same thing with string. Of course, just type string inside of there. And there you can see all of our arithmetic show up there on the screen, right there. And you can also see this doesn't show 2.5, it just shows 2. Another thing we can do is, let's come in here. You can use a shortcut. So let's say that we have a random number, and let's just give it the value of 5. And we wanted to add 5 to random number and then output it on our screen, plus change the value of random number. Well, we could just come in here and go random number, and then plus equal 5. Or we could change that to 10, just so it's not confusing. So what this is going to do is take the value of random number, which is 5, add 10 to it, and then save it back to random number. And there you can see it shows 15 on the screen. And of course, you're going to be able to do that not only with the plus, but you're also going to be able to do it with the minus, and multiplication, and division, and modulus. So those are some shortcut ways to add numbers to themselves. Another shortcut we can have here is we can auto increment by 1 very, very easily. There's actually 2 ways to do it though. So let's go in here and let's just do a random number is equal to, and show that on our screen. And let's just go plus plus, random number, and we'll throw a break statement in there as well, and make sure it's between quotes. And then we're going to use the other way to auto increment or add 1 to a value in a shortcut way. We're going to put the plus plus after it, and we can take that right there, and you're going to see here in a second the difference between the two of them. And there you can see it. Now, whenever you put the plus plus before the actual variable name, what that's going to do is it's going to add 1 to it immediately. And that's the reason why it shows on the screen. If, however, you put the plus plus after, it's going to use the original value for random number in whatever you're doing, and then after it's done using it, it's then going to add 1. So if you would then do an echo down here, like that, now it's going to be 7. And there you can see it is 7. Another thing that's kind of interesting is you can kind of make either create a reference to a variable or make a copy of a variable, however you want to look at it. So let's say I wanted to go reference to number. I could then go equal to, put an ampersand inside of there, and then point at random number, right like that. I could then go into random number and give it the value of 100, and then come down here and call echo again. And I'm going to put single quotes in here this time because I don't want the value for my variable to show up in here. I want the actual name to show up inside of there, so that's why I'm using single quotes this time. And I could go reference to number, and you can see 100 shows up. So if the value for random number changes, this is going to change as well because I went in here and turned this into a reference to random number. So I'm covering pretty much everything here. Another thing, let's go in and talk about if statements. Now there are many different ways to compare values inside of PHP, just like most other languages. You have equal to, you have not equal to, you have less than, you have greater than, you have less than or equal to, and finally you have greater than or equal to. So let's go and use those guys. And then we have a couple other ones that are a little less known. We have the 3 equals in a row, and what this is going to do is say if 2 values are equal and the same type. And another thing you could do is go put the exclamation point in there, and this is going to check if it's not equal or the same type. Alright, so let's use these comparison operators in a useful way. So what we're going to do is execute different code based off of different conditions. And an if statement works great for that. So let's say if 5 is equal to 10, in that situation we're going to want to put our curly brackets here, and then inside we're going to have all the code that's going to execute if that is true. So we're going to come in here and just say 5 is equal to 10, which we know is not true. Another thing we could do is, let's say we want to check another condition, or let's go and just talk about the default first. If you put else inside of here, if 5 is not equal to 10, then this code is going to show up. And we'll go echo is equal to 5, not equal to 10, right like that. And if we execute it, you can see that 5 is not equal to 10. Now what I started to allude to there is the situations in which we would want to actually check multiple different conditions and perform multiple